I don't know what it was about this image. I mean, it's just Dark State getting interviewed, but it kind of reminded me of something. Maybe I'm just tripping, but this is what I thought of the entire interview. Anyway, let's get serious. The show opened tonight, NXT opened tonight with Nia Jax versus Lash Legend. This was a really good match. I really enjoyed it. I loved some of the spots during the match, especially since Lash Legend had to be an underdog, which you don't see very often on NXT. There was a spot where she was trying to pick Nia Jax up to throw her through a table. Nia Jax was just too heavy for her to pick up, so she accidentally fell backwards through the table, putting herself through the table. At least it hurt Nia Jax a bit too. Yeah, this match was really good. I completely understand why this was done, this whole little mini feud with Nia Jax. It's to see how Lash Legend hangs with the bigger girls. Okay, whoa, that sounded completely wrong. I kinda meant with main roster girls, not a diss to Nia Jax. Don't take my words the wrong way. And if this really was a test, I think she pretty much passed it. Now, I still don't know how I see her fitting into the whole Women's World Championship picture. I just don't see her there. To me, she fits more into the Women's North American Championship scene. I just feel like there's still something missing there, right? And I don't know what it was, what it is, but I really like Lash Legend. She just needs to figure that little thing out that really hits her before she can really get to the next level. Because right now, I don't see her, on the same level as a Jada Parker, a Blake Monroe, a Jordan Grace, World Championship contenders. The next match on the card is Joe Henry versus Charlie Dempsey. I love the dynamics here. Charlie Dempsey being this deadpan, overly serious, monotone guy versus Joe Henry, who's just a living meme. It was a really fun match. I love that Joe Henry won. I heard some reports somewhere, I think I read on Reddit somewhere, that Joe Henry is going to be a regular on NXT now until his TNA contract runs up. So he's pretty much part of the NXT roster now, which is nice. I mean, it was a long time coming and it's finally here, so we can stop doing this dual booking between TNA and NXT for him. I still feel kind of bad because he's lost so much momentum over the last couple of months, and I think a large part of that is because TNA knew he was coming to WWE and they didn't want to keep pushing him as their face. But it's a weird situation. But I hope we don't wait too long before we try to put him on the right track. I think keeping him as a mid-card guy would be the worst thing we can do because we know he has main event potential. So we should, dig into that potential a bit more. And, previously I was under the assumption that it was either going to be Javon Evans or Ricky Saints who takes that championship from Obafemi. I feel like if we go this direction, we might see Joe Henry eventually be the one to dethrone Obafemi. I mean, it does make sense. And the fact that we have options is also kind of exciting. I just don't know who is the right option yet. Lola Vice and Kalani Jordan are backstage preparing for their championship match, or well, just tag team match against Fatal Influence. Lola Vice is going on and how she's been on a roll in AAA, winning matches there, winning matches on NXT, and she wants a shot at the NXT Women's Championship now. Kalani Jordan tells her to chill because she's also been on a roll. We can get a bit more into that later. She's also on a roll and she wants that championship next. That's when Jada Parker just comes up out of nowhere, says the two of them need to calm down, and Jada tells them they're goofy if they think Jada Parker is not next in line. So again, I love that we have options for every world championship. Gets me really excited for who could potentially take that belt from JC Jane, who in fact has been having a really incredible reign. But since we're talking about Fatal Influence and JC Jane, they are also interviewed ahead of their match. JC Jane is asked a question, but Fallon Henley answers it instead, and we're really seeing the tension being built because JC Jane is like, thanks Fallon, but she's really demeaning, she doesn't really mean it. And also throw random shade at Jasmine Nix for getting them this match tonight. And then we see on the screen both Masha Slamovich and Ash by Elegance are arriving to be in the crowd for their match tonight. So things are just not going good for JC Jane. But as they walk to the ring to get ready for their match, Lainey Reed wishes her good luck. And that's really interesting to me because Lainey Reed has been, over the past couple of weeks in some backstage segments, really started to try and warm up to JC Jane. It's been small little things, and nothing JC Jane's really reciprocated, but it's been there. Are we going to potentially see Lainey Reed team up or help JC Jane? I think it would be horrible if JC Jane, this whole thing ends with Fatal Influence and JC Jane instantly goes into a new group. I don't think that's what we should do, go into a new group, go into a team. But regardless of whether I want that or not, this little hints that we're building towards, it's really interesting to me. I'm excited to see if that turns into anything. Now, the whole tag team match is also really good. I think it was a really solid match. Not the best match of the night, that was absolutely the main event, but this match really held its own. And Lola Vice is very over with the crowd. I mean, she's always been, but with how infrequent she's being booked, it's always a surprise when you see her and she's so over with the crowd. I really hope we put a belt around her soon. But Kalani Jordan is the one that ends up pinning JC Jane. This is the second week in a row that she picks up a major victory over someone major. Now, although it's just a tag team match, pinning the champion in a tag team match is not always that big of a deal, but it does net you a championship match, usually. She also beat Blake Monroe not too long ago, although that was by countout, so a lot of her big victories are kind of like, you can kind of put an asterisk on it, but hey, I'm one of the biggest Kalani Jordan fans out there, so you know, I'm not gonna complain. Let her get all these victories, man. So afterwards, JC Jane blames Fatal Influence for her loss because they did interfere during the match. It was a lot of shenanigans, and that kind of did end up to her losing. But hey, you know, we know why she's blaming them. She's trying to, we're building a tension between the faction. You get what I'm saying. Now, she walks into Ava's office, who is talking to Ash by Elegance's consigliere. I'm not gonna try and pronounce that. Goddamn, I'm awful at English. Ava basically explains to JC Jane that since she's a double champion, she has to defend her championships twice as much, and she's gonna defend it at Emergence against both Masha Slamovich and Ash by Elegance. This is kind of a match I expected to happen at Bound for Glory, since it kind of makes sense. It's two of the most over and at least well-written characters in the Knockouts division. So I don't know what we're doing for Bound for Glory, but JC Jane is not dropping the championship at Emergence. So I'm conflicted on how I feel about this, but it's gonna be a good match. Chelsea Green arrives. She walks through the women's locker room, basically trying to figure out who Tavion Heights chose as his partner. She runs into Kali Armstrong and compliments her on being a champion, but blows her off. She runs into Karmen Petrovich and she gives her a pass for being Canadian, although she still doesn't really like her. Then she runs into Kendal Grey and she's like, yeah, you were impressive on the women's national team in the Olympics and stuff, but here on NXT, you're pretty much nothing. And then she goes on to find Ethan Page because she thinks it's Kendal Grey who's her challenger. You know, because she and Tavion Heights kind of have a similar background. Now this leads to a match later tonight between Kendal Grey and Alba Fire. And I want to talk about this a bit more, but let's just get through it first. A pretty solid match. Kendal Grey looks great in the ring, but she ends up losing to Alba Fire. After the match, Ethan Page came out during the match. Ethan asked if that's the best America has to offer and says it's a shame that no one else will stack up to the Canadian level of talent that is Chelsea Green. Tavion Heights comes out and he says that while he respects Kendal Grey, she wasn't his pick, and his pick is a woman who has done something no other woman has done in the entirety of WWE history, which is winning an Olympic gold medal. And that's when Tyra Steele comes up behind all of them. She suplexes the Secret Hervice, suplexes Ethan Page, and she and Tavion Heights stand tall. I think this was really cool. I think this mutual alliance, even though it's just going to be a short thing, is going to be really beneficial to Tyra Steele, who's been struggling to completely get over, at least in my eyes, even in my girlfriend's eyes. Like, I've shown her some Evolve stuff and she's been watching Tyra Steele too. She doesn't completely buy into her yet, but I think this might, you know, at least unlock something in her. It should be very fun, especially since she's working with very good character workers in Chelsea Green, Ethan Page, and Tavion Heights is also kind of there with his history with the NQCC. And you know, I'm just glad she's finally back on NXT since she did win LFG and she still has that contract for a women's title match. So I want to see if we, you know, are remembering that actually happened, because we kind of forgot. Now also, this kind of sucks for Kendal Grey. I mean, she was in this match and she was like, yeah, nah, I respect her, but she isn't my partner, which is like, damn. And then also, she doesn't even lose to Chelsea Green. She loses to Alba Fire, which is, we all know Alba Fire is a great wrestler. Like, she was Kaylee Ray back in NXT UK. She was the longest NXT UK women's champion, right? So she has her respect, but as Alba Fire, she kind of sucks, right? She's kind of a jobber, and that sucks for Kendal Grey, who's been building momentum on Evolve. So just to come here and lose to Alba Fire kind of sucks, right? This whole thing kind of sucks for Kendal Grey. Now, I'm not saying she's a jobber or she's being baited or anything. You know, I completely understand the position, and it was a pretty good showing for her. It's just, right, you know, you kind of feel bad. Before we head on out to the main event of the show, Josh Briggs comes down to the ring and he says the crowd's boos mean nothing to him. The crowd actually booed to turn off his mic. I think it would have been very funny if, you know, Inamura came out and Briggs' mic was actually shut down. But hey, you know, doesn't matter. Really, just my fancy booking. And Josh says that, you know, you should believe it when people show you who they truly are, because Inamura was never his friend, and he only came back to NXT to chase championships, not their friendship. Briggs says that he's not a man of honor, he's a man of mayhem, and since they're in Philadelphia next week, he challenges Inamura to a Philadelphia street fight. Inamura comes out, he calls Briggs a jackass, which the crowd really loves, and he says he accepts the match because his honor next week will be in beating Briggs. The two start a brawl, and that's how we end this segment. I really wish we had this match at Heatwave. It feels like a pretty big match, and it's going to be a pretty big victory for Inamura, or at least it should be. Briggs should not win this. Now, also, on the note of talking about Inamura, I really hope the dude stays in NXT. Like, he's built up such a good following such a good gimmick character here in NXT. It would suck if like in 2 months he leaves back to Noah. Like, I feel like he's a solid part of what NXT is currently. I don't want to see the guy leave. I want to see him here. And if you watch my channel, you know that initially I was not a very big fan of him. I didn't really feel him. He's completely won me over. Like, the guy needs to stay here. Like, don't send him back, please. We also have a little backstage interview with Jordynne Grace where she says in many ways she and Blake Monroe are very similar. Jordynne Grace and Blake Monroe were both at the same time came into NXT. Not at the same time, but relatively at the same time they came into NXT. And that's why Jordynne Grace felt like she could team up with Blake Monroe because they could kind of get along, come from the same path. But that's when Blake Monroe turned on her. And that's why that betrayal hit so hard, because she feels like the two of them come from a very similar background. Now after that interview later on, Blake Monroe is in Ava's office, kind of just dissing Jordynne Grace. And then, Ava's like, you know what, next week you two can have a face-to-face. We also have another little segment with, what's his name? Jasper Troy. Damn, how did I forget his name? He's one of my favorite on NXT right now. That sucks of me. Anyways, he talks about his match next week against Ricky Saints, which should be a banger of a match, but unfortunately I have a feeling Jasper Troy is gonna lose. And I know this is gonna be a very unpopular opinion. I really like Jasper Troy a lot more than Ricky Saints, and I think Jasper Troy should win. I think, honestly, right now, I feel like he's a better wrestler, not wrestler. Overall, his presentation, how he is presented, I feel like it's a lot better than what Ricky Saints is, and that's why I'm more invested in his character. So I kinda hope he wins. And now in the main event, it was Dark State versus Moose, Obafemi, Trick Williams, and Javon Evans, and goddamn was this such an amazing match. Generally, like sometimes I just don't talk about the match and I tell you guys to go watch it. This is the match, go watch that match. I'm not gonna say anything about it, go watch it. It was just so good. Javon Evans really stood out in this match though, like the crowd really loves him. He has that undeniable charisma. Like, that Jeff Hardy type of charisma where it's just the guy's so naturally likable. That's what Javon Evans has, and WWE really has lightning in a bottle with him. Like I mentioned earlier, people who could take the championship from Obafemi, it should really be Javon Evans, like no question. Now, the match ends up with the good guys losing. Well, not the good guys, the main eventers, Moose, Obafemi, them. They end up losing because Dark State manages to isolate everybody, have Javon Evans down. Trick Williams almost stops them, but he backs off. He decides not to, and as well leads to Dark State picking up the victory. So another big victory for Dark State. They always win these big matches, and I kind of suspected that the good guys, the main eventers, weren't gonna get along. So I kind of suspected they were gonna lose. But yeah, it all makes sense. Darkseid really does need to find something though, because as much as I like them for what they still are missing something very big. And I think that key thing that they're missing is that there's no individuality to the wrestlers. Like no wrestler has a unique character. Dion Lennox had something way back when, before he even joined Darkseid, when you still had that thing with Karmen Petrovich and Shante Adonis when they were dating. That was months ago. He did have his own individual unique character, but nobody else has that, and they even lost that part of Dion Lennox. So I feel like if we can just get to know these wrestlers individually, like is one of these guys a loose cannon? Is one of these guys like a ladies man? Like something, give us something to attach to these characters to. And I don't mean in their backstage segments. Let's actually see them interact with others. Let's actually see them do stuff. So if I had to give tonight's episode a rating, I would say it was a solid 9 out of 10. I really enjoyed the episode. It wasn't perfect. You know what? No, I'll say it was a 10 out of 10. Again, wasn't perfect, but from a pure enjoyment standpoint, I say it was a 10 out of 10 show. I didn't sit here and say, damn, that sucked. Damn, that wasn't good. I think I thoroughly enjoyed every single part of the show. And, 10 out of 10 is what it gets. Again, not the perfect show by any means, but from a pure enjoyment standpoint, 10 out of 10. So if you like my, review, or I guess you can just say it's talking about the show, leave a like, subscribe. I cover NXT and TNA weekly along with pretty much all of their pay-per-views, so you'll probably be interested in that. Leave a like, subscribe. I hope to see you guys again soon. Goodbye.
Okay, bye.